Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. My name is James Batchelor. Thank you very much for joining us for these live broadcasts on the Car Dealer Magazine YouTube channel. Now, today on the show, we're running one of our special legal shows in association with Lawgistics, and I'm joined as ever by the very eloquent pair of Nona and Kirill from Lawgistics. Hello, both.
Hello.
Hi, James.
Hello. Always a treat to have you on. Now, in these legal shows, we talk about current issues affecting dealers and the issues dealers have been contacting Lawgistics about. Now, the next 20 to 30 minutes, we're going to be discussing furlough fraud, redundancies, local lockdowns, the job retention scheme bonus, and a few other issues as well. Now, this is a live show. And if you've got something you want to put to Lawgistics, then please do pop your question into the comments box. And if it's relevant, I'll do my best to ask it to the pair. Right then, well, let's get cracking because time is always in short supply on these shows. Nona, hello. Thanks for coming on. Can I start with you, please? Now, firstly, can we have a bit of clarity on the furlough scheme? I mean, is it definitely ending in October?
Currently, it is definitely ending in October, but as we've said many times, these things move around. But it looks like Rishi Sunak is fixed on that. Although I was reading a report from the National Institute of Economic and Social Research this morning,
Wow.
which has just been published. They are saying the closure of the scheme seems to be a mistake. So they are basically saying the cost of keeping it going is cheaper than all the economic and social effects of it stopping, because obviously there will be more redundancies when the government aren't propping up the national wage bill from there. I think they've also said about the bonus thing that's coming up as well, that's too small to be effective as well. So that's quite a big document, that's quite new, so whether that will have any influence, don't know. But yeah, currently furlough's stopping. Of course, we're in the stage already where employers are paying the national insurance and pension contributions, and the employees still getting 80%, so it's no different to them, it's just how they're being paid. And then from September, the employer's got to pay, or the government's paying up to 70%, and that puts a cap on of 2,187.50, and then in October, the government are only paying 60%. And then the cap there is up to 1875, and the employer has got to top that up. And I think we're now sort of seeing employers making the decision now whether they're going to get rid of people or whether they can afford to keep people on bar October. But yeah, we'll see. We are seeing more and more redundancy inquiries coming, unfortunately, and I think that National Institute are expecting the figures to be pretty high if the scheme does come to a final end in October, which at the moment it looks like it will do.
Yeah. I mean, we've covered it in depth on the website. You know, the 730,000 fewer people on payrolls, figures out from the ONS yesterday. There have also been numerous calls to Rishi Sunak about extending the furlough scheme. And of course, you just mentioned that big report. I mean, you know, I suppose the best advice for dealers at the moment is just to assume that it is going to end in October. And as ever, as has been proved in the last few months, these things can change at the very last hour, can't they? So we'll wait to see what happens. Could we just also have a bit of clarity about this £1,000 bonus? So it's a £1,000 bonus that's given to employers if they bring back an employee from furlough and keep them in work until at least January. How do you think that's actually going to work? I mean, how are dealers are actually going to apply for this? And also, I mean, do you actually think it's enough of a sweetener for an employer to bring somebody back?
Yeah, I think the general consensus is it's not. Certainly this report didn't look on it particularly favourably. I think employers are saying, well, it costs us much more to employ people. I think the average monthly wage is about $530. So even for part-time minimum wage people, 1,000 isn't really enough. If you're a big employer and you furloughed lots and lots of people, it's going to be a nice bonus. But arguably, those employers that have brought people back don't need it. So it is a very strange thing, but it is available at the moment. The rules aren't out completely, as ever. They're coming in September, but at the moment, yep. So if you've sent 20 staff on furlough, you should be able to claim £20,000 if they're still in employment on the 31st of January. and also not serving their notice. So you can't give them notice on the 20th because they won't qualify.
Yeah.
So they've still got to be on the payroll, not serving their notice at the 31st of January. And then there will be a system for employers to make the application in February at some point. But there's still more details to come. So whether they will change that or do something with it, they've said September for that, but it is as we know it. But whether it make a difference, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I do find the date of January quite an odd one. Why January is chosen specifically? Surely we should be encouraging people to keep people in work for a long time, not give them a goal to actually work towards. But it's going to be interesting to see how that actually plays out. We're going to have to move on. Kirill, can I turn to you, please? So we've had a question here from Dave in Macclesfield. Now, we are making one of our mechanics redundant. We gave him notice. He's currently on furlough and paid at furlough rate. He says he should be paid at full rate. Is this true?
I'm afraid that almost certainly is true. If I want to give you a full legal answer, then the two-word answer is it depends, as in many legal matters. But in case that his notice is the same what he's entitled to by law, that is statutory minimum notice, which will be the case, I think, in most circumstances, then we have very recently new regulations pushed out by the government, which basically, if there was any uncertainty about this issue, then the government certainly clarified that the notice pay should be at the full rate. So the furlough should be basically ignored for the purposes of notice pay calculation. The businesses can claim 80% of it through the furlough scheme as usual, but they will have to top it up to the normal pay for the notice.
Okay, brilliant. Well, hopefully that answers Dave's question there. We've had another question here from, well, let's actually stick on the furlough topic, because of course it's one that I'm sure lots of dealers are very interested in. Question here from Anonymous. If I have to close my business, do I still have to pay my staff? Can I claim furlough? Nona, can you answer that one?
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, because businesses, if it goes into local lockdown, they might have to close their businesses. I mean, car dealers have generally so far been exempt from the local lockdowns, but they're local. So the local authorities now have power to decide what to do from there. So yeah, if a car dealership has to close down, you've got to pay your people. Now, this is difficult because the furlough scheme is closed to new entrants. So if you were perhaps a service and repair garage that kept open but kept half your staff in and they never went on furlough, but the other half did go on furlough, you could only put those that did go on furlough back on furlough.
Yeah.
So those that you've employed all the way through, like me and Kirill, we've been here all the way through. If we had to shut down here, you know, would we get paid? You know, we'd hope so. and you know, Joel would have to try and pay us because we'd have to. But those people that had been on furlough, he could put them back on full-time furlough. So that's a bit of a gap that I'm not sure if that's going to get plugged, because that could be really, really difficult. Now, if employers have got a short-term layoff clause in their contract, which certainly ours that come through HR manager recommends that employers put that in there, that's a bit easier. You can say, well, we're going to lay you off for a month or similar from there. But if you haven't got that clause in your employment contracts, yeah, employers are going to have to pay those people. And if they haven't previously been on furlough, that isn't going to be an option to them under the current rules.
Yeah, and you know, it's been a sort of a big thing, really, hasn't it? That there's obviously the furlough scheme is so intricate and it can't cover everybody, but this is a major issue, isn't it? Because, like you say, local authorities have got the right to actually enforce the rules as they see fit in their area. And I'm surprised yet, I know there's plenty of time for this to happen, but I'm surprised yet we haven't heard of a car dealer being forced to close down. And if it does, we are going to be hearing more of this, aren't we? So hopefully that answers that particular person's question there, but it's going to be very interesting to see if that actually happens. And let's move on. Kirill, another question here. We have a receptionist who has been with us for 13 years. Sadly, we had to make savings and made him redundant. I sent him an email to say that with regret, his job role was redundant, and we gave him 12 weeks consultation period, which has now expired. What do we do now? Shall we just send him a letter to say his job has finished?
Well, it sounds to me like the author of this question is a bit confused, frankly. And it's a confusion quite often made. The consultation and notice periods are different. Just speculating the figures that they provided here, we're probably talking about the notice period of 12 weeks of the consultation, because consultation does not have to be 12 weeks, certainly if just one person is made redundant. So in this case, the business owner just seems to be confused as to the consultation and notice. What happens is you first, in redundancy situation, you first consult with the staff as to what can be done to save the job and avoid redundancy. If after consultation, which, as you say, just one reception has to go, can last, say, 2 or 3 weeks, probably. Nothing changed, no alternatives identified. We looked around, there aren't any jobs available. So then we'll move on to the notice period. The decision will be made that this job role is made redundant at that point, not at the start of the consultation. And that's another mistake, which is quite glaring. And if it goes to the employment tribunal, it doesn't look good. If you announce someone that this role is at risk of redundancy, then please don't say with regard to your job role is made redundant. You have to say that with regard to your job role is at risk of redundancy. And then you go into consultation. And then if everything stays the same, you make a decision to make this job role redundant and you move into the redundancy notice. So I think really my advice would be to this business, go and talk to your local solicitor, seek advice.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure there are lots of dealers who are confused. I mean, quite rightly so, this person is confused because for a lot of dealers out there, they are having to deal with an unprecedented situation which they haven't found themselves in before. And so the best advice is to go and talk to a solicitor.
Absolutely.
And make sure you are, you're doing things by the book.
Well, and my fear is that, frankly, within a year's time or so, we all will be experts in redundancy. That's not something I'll be hoping for, but it looks almost inevitable.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you. Just a reminder again, this is a live show. If you do want to have a question answered, please do drop it into the comments box. Actually, can we stick with you, Kirill, please? Another question submitted here, anonymously, again, understandably. My accountant said to me that not my accountant, this is the question, okay, Kirill, just to clarify.
Just for clarity.
I would like to think my accountant spoke to me beforehand before talking to you, but there we are. My accountant said to me that she made an error when she submitted a claim for furlough money. To be fair, furlough calculations are not that straightforward. What do we have to do now?
I totally agree that the furlough calculations are not that straightforward, especially now when we're in the flexible furlough. It almost takes a math degree to try to work it out properly. So I'm not frankly surprised that a mistake would be made. And credit to the accountant that they owned up and said it looks like they made an error. That's not a biggie. What the business have to do in that circumstances, they have to go back to their HMRC, bring up their helpline and say, unfortunately, we made an error in our previous application. If memory serves, if the claim is submitted and then within 72 hours, the business can go back online and retract the claim. After that, they will have to ring up the HMRC helpline and just notify them of potential error. And what will happen then? Either they will pay back the money honestly claimed, or the claim will be reduced, or the future claim for furlough will be reduced for that amount. So that's not a problem at this stage. And I say, as long as you come clean and say it looks like you made a genuine error, or for that matter, if the business thinks they underclaimed, the process is the same. Within 72 hours, they can retract their claim, and afterwards they can ring up the HMRC helpline and ask to amend their claim because they think they underclaimed. So at this stage, I don't think it's a big problem.
Okay, brilliant. Actually, Kirill, can I stay with you, please? There's a question for me, actually. I should probably pop it into the comments box and read it from there. Not going to. Now, we've been hearing a lot of reports in the media of HMRC starting to prosecute for furlough fraud. Now, these two words, furlough fraud, are becoming very, very sort of popular at the moment. I mean, is this something dealers really need to be aware of? And should they start to be getting concerned about this?
Well, if that's a personal question, shall we just say it's a conflict of interest and leap at this stage? I'm only joking. Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right, and it seems to be a growing concern. I think it will be safe to assume that HMRC will be first looking into cases of blatant fraud. And what seems to be happening most often is that the furloughed employee is still carrying on work with the employer. It could be the same employer, or it could be an associate company. For example, if the companies have exactly the same directors, and the director says, well, you're a fellow at this company, but you know what, go across the road, it's another company, you can earn a bit of money there. That is very dubious practice, and I think businesses really would be well advised to stay well clear of it. So that would be certainly the biggest concern, the cases of blatant fraud, when it's quite clear that the claim was set up to exploit the scheme, such as doing work for an associate company, or indeed in most blatant cases for the same employer. If the business believes there is an overpayment, as I say, needs to happen. Now, that needs to happen really within 90 days when it comes to light that the mistake was made. Because what happens afterwards, that HMRC will deem the overpayment as deliberately concealed. And then in the extreme cases, they can start doing investigation with a potential criminal prosecution in mind. HMRC does not prosecute, it goes to CPR, a crime prosecution service, but they certainly investigate cases of potential fraud. And I say they will be certainly looking into fraud cases because they would want to set a deterrent one day, and plus to guard the public purse against any potential abuse. But if the business owes up, says, well, within 90 days, that's a mistake, or by the 20th of October 2020, I think, I think it's worth checking the latest guidance, what HMRC says on that point. But basically, if you own up to your mistake and says, well, that's a genuine error, in case if it is indeed a genuine error, so it can be easily made with the complexity of the scheme, then the business will have less to worry about.
Okay, but well, I do feel as though that's probably something we're going to be coming back to quite a lot. Unfortunately, so in the next coming weeks, really, and probably in forthcoming shows as well. Let's move on though. And Nona, we've got a question here from Mark. He says, a customer complained I was breaching GDPR by asking for and keeping their details of NHS track and trace. How do I avoid a formal complaint? I'm sure NHS track and trace questions have been flooding into you. I mean, what would you say to Mark?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting quite a few GDPR questions. I think because like furlough and unprecedented and all those kind of words have taken over where we're at. But, you know, two years ago, we were all like, everything was GDPR. And you can't forget that. And people do and are complaining. This should be a straightforward thing. You know, the government are saying you need to keep or take their details down on there. And the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, who's police all things data protection, there is some guidance on there actually. But anything with GDPR, we've been having a discussion this morning with a client about Zoom meetings. You know, if you're doing anything different in your business, you need to keep reviewing that GDPR policy. It's not something that you did back in May 2018 and can forget about. You need to update it all the time. And if you're using more technology, you've got to think about that and go back and have a look. And again, our HR manager, it prompts people every year to have a look at it and put stuff on. So that's good there. But you have to have it in your privacy policy and say, we will be taking, as per government instructions, your details for test, track and trace. You're only allowed to take the details you need, which is usually their name, contact number, and the time they arrived. You can't use those details as a sneaky way, a bit of marketing. Oh, you come in, you know, because they're not given to you for marketing purposes. They are purely for track and trace, and that's it. And I think the guidance at the moment is to keep them for 21 days and then destroy them. So that needs to be written into the policy as well. But yeah, people will complain, I'm sure, to the ICO, because people love complaining and thinking they can get some compensation. But GDPR Article 6 sets out all the reasons why you can process data. One of them would be legitimate interest. And in this case, particularly for test, track and trace, that's in the public interest as well. And that's the standalone reason. I think that's enough. So the complainer isn't going to go anywhere. And I would hope the ICO would, if it does go to the Information Commission Office, say they're quite entitled to keep those. But it's got to be in the privacy policy. So don't just do it, put it in your privacy policy as well. So if you get investigated, the ICO know you take it seriously and have done all the right things or tried to do the right things.
Brilliant. That was great. I've actually just had a question emailed to me here, and I'm not going to give the chap's name for obvious reasons. Now, this guy says, we sold a van to a chap about 2 weeks ago. He has had trouble with the wiring on the vehicle, causing it to cut out. He returned it to us saying he no longer wants the vehicle and is demanding a full refund. I have told him we will repair the vehicle under the terms of the warranty. He has said that he wants a refund. Could you please clarify whether we have a chance to repair the vehicle or have to give him his money back? I don't know if that's a question for you, Kirill, really. So it's about whether they've got a chance to actually repair the vehicle or do they have to actually give a refund? What do you think?
Well, I would first of all look into the type of vehicle that was sold. It was a van, so presumably it was used just a normal van for commercial purposes, in which case that's not a consumer purchase, in which case the Consumer Rights Act does not apply and there is no entitlement to have the van rejected in most cases. The fact that the van was accepted and put to usage, the trader probably did some modifications, perhaps that will help the case, and then they can safely say that the very short-term right to reject the van initially, rather not to accept it, rather, was lost because the Consumer Rights Act and the Sale of Goods Act quite different to that subject. So yes, I think the position of the dealer will be much stronger if it is a commercial transaction. If it is a consumer transaction and the issue arose within the first 30 days, then, well, first of all, the consumer will have to prove that that was a fault present at the point of sale. If it relates to electric wiring, that's something that probably develops instantaneously. So again, a good argument to say there was not any fault at the point of sale, specifically any problem with the wire, say, engine cutting out. Was the engine cutting out when the van was delivered? Well, probably not. Then on the face of it, that's the rebuttal of the statutory presumption that the fault was present. Well, it's rather the evidence to suggest that the van was not faulty as sold. But say if the consumer goes to another garage and gets a report to say, well, yes, most likely there was something wrong with the wiring, perhaps just frayed wire, whatever it is. Then if the consumer insists on rejection within the first 30 days, that's the statutory entitlement, and the warranty is an additional one. So if the consumer does not want to pursue the warranty, I'm afraid there's very little the trader can do. On the other hand, if the consumer agrees to have the van repaired under warranty or otherwise, and then says, well, they have a good conversation over the phone with the dealer, and the dealer put the mind trust, say, yes, well, the repair is just bringing to in, we'll have a look, we'll do whatever it needs to be done. And then probably a day later, another phone call and say, well, actually, I just, I thought it's true, it's not worth it for me, I just want to reject that. That's something the consumer cannot do, because if the consumer accepts repair, even within the 30 days, that they cannot then change their mind and instead insist on a refund.
Okay, brilliant. Well, hopefully that answers your question. Well, obviously directed to the person who's just emailed me. Again, if you've got a question you want to be answered, please do drop it into the comments box or email me, just like this chat has just done. Finally, actually, two more questions, actually, Kirill.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
It's about face masks. Now, we did do a big investigation piece about this, about whether customers have to wear them, whether dealership staff have to wear them. But we've had a question here, which would be great if you can answer. this person saying, do our staff have to wear face masks? One of them is refusing to come back from furlough and says it is not safe without a face mask.
Right. Well, that's something we get asked a lot actually about face masks, and it didn't help that the regulation in England actually they were put in place just on the very eve when it was obligatory to wear masks in shops. And what also complicates the matter, the position is different in Scotland, England, and Wales. In Wales, the masks are still just merely an option. So, say if the dealer is in England, whereas you, then the members of staff are not required to wear face masks. And the same exemption applies to the director's office of the company and their contractors. So really it's limited largely to the customers and just any person that walks in from the public into the dealership, the showroom. In Scotland, the employees would be exempt from wearing a face mask if the social distances of 2 meters is in place or there is a plastic barrier protecting them from the customers. So going back to the question, I don't think that that member of staff will have a valid reason to say, well, it's not safe for me to come back from furlough, because what the official guidance still says, I believe, that no extra PPE is required on top of what's normally used. So if prior to the lockdown, prior to the COVID epidemic, in most cases there will be no talking about it, unless some paint shop, whatever it was. Face masks were not used, so there will be no requirement to wear face masks at this stage. And I don't think this will be a fair objection not to come back from furlough.
Brilliant. Who thought face masks could be so complicated, eh?
Indeed, absolutely. It's just it was completely unnecessary. I think everyone was seeking clarity, and we, until the very, very last moment, we still could only speculate what was going to be.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, finally, let me just stick with you, Kirill. Again, no news, right? You can relax now. Final question. It's a question that's emailed to me this morning, actually. Stephen asked, what is the position if a client asks us to remove their DPF emissions filter and then disable their engine management software to allow their vehicle to operate without the DPF system fitted? What's the answer to that, Kirill?
Well, the answer should be no to the customer. We know the DPF could be problematic and they can cause problems, especially if the car is taken on short journeys, etc. So the filter is not going to regenerate, which leads to blockage, which leads to the filter developing a fault and needing to be replaced. So it may be tempting to have the filter replaced, just cut out, and then the ECU checked effectively, so the car will operate without the filter. On the face of it, will rectify the problem, but the problem is really the real problem with dealer, that the car will then fail an MOT test automatically because the DPF was a factory fitment. It cannot then be removed, and also there is a danger that the vehicle will simply illegal to be used on the road. So I think the answer to this question should be no to the customer who can't do that.
Brilliant. Well, I think we're going to have to call it a day for now, I'm afraid. But thank you so much, Nona. Thank you so much, Kirill, for coming on. Some fantastic advice there. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we're next on the air on Friday. If you want to get involved in a Car Dealer Live just like this one, then please do email me, james.batchelor@blackballmedia.co.uk, or James Baggett. He's available at james@blackballmedia.co.uk. Until next time, thank you very much indeed for watching, and bye-bye.